Hello, friends. Come on in. Pull up a rocking chair and sit with me for a spell. Hi there. I'm Bobby Autry, coming to you from my back porch here in beautiful Savannah, Georgia, where the creek moves slow, the breeze carries the stories of yesterday, and there's always room for one more rocking chair right here beside me. You know, when you live long enough, you begin to realize something. Life is made up of stories. Some are funny, some are a little embarrassing, and some teach us lessons we didn't even know we needed. But every now and then, when you sit back and you really look at it all, you can see how God quietly walked beside you the whole way. So today, I want to share one of those stories, a memory from the road behind me, that just might make you smile and maybe, just maybe, even remind you of a story from your own life. So, settle in, take a deep breath, and enjoy a few minutes here on the porch, because this is Stories and Tall Tales from My Back Porch Rocking Chair. You know, every country has a long, rich tradition of invoking supernatural threats in order to keep kids in line. Maybe parents save it for their last resort, but if and when they can't get their kids to behave, there is a certain terrifying boogeyman who can. He has many names and takes on different forms and even different genders, but every culture on earth knows him, that shadowy, elusive, diabolical entity who feasts on a strict diet of naughty children. He may even be a little evil, but he also has an uneasy alliance with desperate parents who can't get their kids to go to bed, do their chores, take their bath, or just mind in general. One of those legends most of us remember is the one of the Headless Horseman. Now, he's a legendary figure most famously depicted in Washington Irving's 1820 tale, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The story follows Ichabod Crane, a superstitious schoolteacher who encounters the ghostly Headless Horseman while riding home through the haunted town of Sleepy Hollow. The horseman is able to be a spirit and who lost his head during the Revolutionary War, and he terrorizes the area, particularly targeting Ichabod, who mysteriously disappears after their encounter. This tale is considered one of America's first ghost stories and has become a classic of American folklore. But you know, there's even a story in the Bible about a scary man, the story of the man in the tombs that's found over in Mark chapter 5, verses 1 through 10. He lived among the tombs near the region and was so tormented because many unclean spirits that no one could restrain him, not even with chains. And he often broke free from the fetters and lived in the mountains and the tombs, and he cried out day and night, and he even cut himself with stones due to his extreme suffering, and the kids of the town would come out and try to find him, or they would be afraid and run back home and into their beds at night just in case he came round. But today, I want to kind of lead into a story that was part of my childhood. Now, it's the legend of Soap Sally. Now, Soap Sally is a haunting figure from the folklore of the Appalachian Mountains and the American South, known for her role as a wicked washerwoman and child getter. She is even said to lure children into her home, allowing them to gorge themselves on candy and then turn them into wax to make soap. This legend serves as a cautionary tale warning children to avoid the woods where Soap Sally lurked. The tale has roots in the 19th century when families collected wood ash to make lice for soap, and it wasn't intended to keep children focused on their chores rather than potentially harmfully the lice solution. But for me and my friends, back in 1954 to 59, that was back when our parents told us about Soap Sally and her husband, Soap Sackman. When we would go camping, which was a lot of families did back then, after a full day of hiking and fishing and horseback riding, getting things set up around the camp, having a great meal cooked over an open fire, then everybody would gather wood and come settle down around the campfire. And our parents, we always had 2, 3, or 4, maybe even more families that was all camping together. And we'd gather around the fire, making s'mores or roasting marshmallows. And all the men folk, my dad included, some neighbors, some of my friends' dads, some uncles, and some of their kids that would all be there around the fire, and they would tell us stories about the adventures they had when they were growing up. But somehow, one of them would always end up telling us stories about Soap Sally and her husband, Soap Sack Man, the husband of Soap Sally. It seems kids in the mid-50s were so bad that Soap Sally could not keep up with her soap-making business because there were so many bad children that would no longer mind their parents. And she had to get herself a husband to take over going around and grabbing the bad children that would not do their chores or take a bath or go to bed when told to. So Soap Sack Man would prowl around at night and sneak into the rooms of bad boys and girls through unlocked windows. And he would grab them, put them in his sack, and take them back to Soap Sally, where they would turn the kids into soap. They lived far out in the woods so nobody could find them. They had an old wooden house with a big dilapidated barn where they would keep the children hanging from ropes dangling down from the ceiling. They had a pack of wolves roaming around in the barn just waiting to grab any child that might slip loose and try to get away. Well, sure enough, us kids always got scared. And it was really hard at times to go to sleep because most of us kids, now especially my brother Buddy and myself, we knew we had done some things we weren't supposed to do, almost, if not every day. And Soap Sally had put us on her soap list, and they had planned on catching us just any day. Any night, real soon. But me and Buddy decided we're not going to wait to be caught. We would trick Soap Sally or Soap Sack Man, and we would catch them and throw them in the pot before they could do it to us. So, we knew the woods around our neighborhood pretty well, and being part of Cherokee Indian on my daddy's side, we just knew we could find the soap-making place. And we spent a good portion of the summer searching about 20-mile radius of our house. Now, there were a lot of back roads and creeks and a covered bridge and plenty places to look. And we would leave special markings on the tree so we could figure out where we had already looked. But the stories of Soap Sally just kept being told. And we got threatened by Mom and Dad more and more as we kept staying out late, not doing our chores, or especially not taking our baths. But we just knew we would get Soap Sally and her husband, Soap Sack Man, before they could ever get us. And I remember it like it was yesterday. It was on a Saturday in early August. The weather was hot. We'd gone a very long time without any rain. Everything was dried up. And kept talking about it on the TV and the radio about being careful with matches and any fires, as it could start a forest fire and burn the whole county up in a flash. Well, most folks listened to them, and there were no fires anywhere around, except, Buddy and his gang, and me and my gang, were off playing tree tag. Now, that's where we would climb to the top of pine trees and sway back and forth and jump from tree to tree and chase each other around just like regular tag, except in trees. And yes, sometimes the treetops would break and we would come tumbling down, branch, and get all scratched up. And every now and then, one of us would break an arm, a finger, or some other useless part. But heck, at least we didn't get tagged. And generally, Well, that always ended up with us getting in trouble with Mom. She would say, Bobby Ray Autry, just wait till your daddy gets home. I'm going to get him to call Soap Sally and have her come haul y'all away and make soap out of you. Ooh, I'm sorry. Sometimes I just get carried away down a rabbit trail and forget what I was telling you. But on this particular day, while swinging from pine tree to pine tree, we saw it. Kind of off in the distance, but we saw it. There was some white smoke, and nobody was supposed to be having any fires out in the woods. But there it was, a long white trail of smoke. And us boys, we knew just about where it was coming from. So we all climbed down the trees and started making plans on spreading out and finding the source, because we just knew the smoke was coming from Soap Sally's hiding place. And now, we would put an end to the soap making factory. We also knew it was getting a little late, but we just knew it wouldn't take very long for us to zero in on the place. Buddy and his guys, me and my guys, we all went running through the woods and creeks and over a couple of hills. We were right. There it was. An old wooden shack. Over to one side was a bunch of broken bicycles, a couple of wagons, and even a couple of tricycles, and a torn up baby carriage. Out to the side of the house, there was a fire pit, and over the fire pit hung this big black pot with a big wooden paddle sticking up over one side. And a fire was blazing under the pot, and white smoke was drifting up and up and away. We had found the place. Now all we had to do was figure out how to get Soap Sally and her husband out around the pot so we could knock them in it and make them into soap. Well, it's amazing how many excuses boys can make about why they can't stay and help. They had something they'd forgot to do at home, and they would get in trouble if they didn't get home and take care of it. Oh, it's getting late. I need to be home. Mom expects us there. We're going off. Just one excuse after another. So before we knew what happened, it was only me and Buddy. It would be up to us to save all the boys and girls of the world from being turned into soap. Of course, that's when brother versus brother would kick in. Buddy would say, I dare you to go knock on that door and get them to come out. And I would say, yeah, right. I double dog dare you to do it. And once again, I would want to make mine better than his. So I added the, I know you won't do it, scaredy cat. Scaredy cat, scaredy cat, Buddy's a scaredy cat. About that time, we heard a truck come rumbling down the dirt road, and we jumped back behind some trees. The truck with a bunch of dust came past us and pulled up over next to the barn. And we could see an older man get out. He was coughing and had a handkerchief over his face. He went to the back of the truck and got out a couple of bicycles and took them in the barn. Then when he went to the other side of the truck and he opened the door and he got something else out. It was covered in a blanket. And he also had a big canvas bag with a rope tied around it. And he took them and dragged them into the house. I looked at Buddy. Buddy looked at me. And we said, we need to get out of here now. And we both took off running. Not sure how long or how far, but we both ran until we dropped to the ground and could hardly breathe. I said, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? We've got to tell somebody. Who are we going to tell? What are we going to do, Buddy? Well, that's when your family upbringing kicks in. When you really feel scared. When you really need to go where it's safe. You go home. You go to where your mom and dad are. Because no matter what, their love will always comfort you, even if you don't like to admit it. So that's what we did. We went running home. Went running in the house. Here's Buddy and me going in, and we're both trying to talk at one time. Daddy, we need your help, Daddy. Help, Daddy. Oh, it's so bad, Daddy. Hey, Daddy. Of course, neither Mom or Dad had any idea what had happened. And both of them were trying to calm us down. Dad said, all right, boys, calm down. What's it? Tell me what happened. What's the matter? What have y'all done now? Here's another side note. Mom and Dad generally knew when we came in crying or pouting or upset, 99% of the time was because we had got into some trouble, done something we shouldn't have done or whatever, but was generally because we were in trouble and it was our fault. Well, before I could say anything, Buddy said, we saw Soap Sally and Soap Sack Man, and they had a bunch of kids in a big bag, and they threw them in a barn. And when they got the soap pot boiling and start turning those kids into soap, Mom said, "What are you boys talking about? You know there's not really a Soap Sally. Your daddy just likes to scare you boys." To which I said, Daddy wasn't kidding. Daddy was telling the truth. And Soap Sally has got all those kids. We saw it. Daddy's gonna get his gun. Daddy, get your gun. Well, let's go shoot them. They need help. Well, that's when Daddy got real serious. He said, sit down, boys, and look me in the eyes and tell me what's really going on. Both Buddy and I sat there with tears coming down our faces and told Mom and Dad the whole story of how we found Soap Sally's hideout and the kids that they had and the wolves and the big black boiling pot and paddle and everything. Mom turned to Dad and she said, Charles, I told you not to fill those boys' mind with all that Soap Sally stuff. This is all your fault. Well, Dad said, okay, boys, okay. Let me get Thomas. That was our next door neighbor. He was a big man and he worked as a security guard. I'll get Thomas. And you take us to where you saw this Soap Sally and we'll get to the bottom of this. Well, we all jumped in the car, gave Dad directions going on the streets and roads and to where the old dirt road wandered through the woods to the place. It was dark by then. As we went down that road through the woods, you could only see the headlights on the road. As we got closer and closer, down the road, you could see a fire. And Dad slowed down. And that's when he turned to Thomas and said, Tom, you see that? Thomas said, yep. Charles, you better slow down a little bit. Let's get a little closer, see what this is. Dad was barely moving as the car pulled closer to the house. And then we saw the door to the front of the house open up. And a man and a woman come out on the porch. and they started waving toward us. Dad stopped the car and said, "You boys stay in the car." Now, that was one command I was going to obey. And him and Thomas got out, and they walked over to the people on the porch, and they started talking. Buddy and I both looked over the back seat, watching. In a few minutes, the woman kind of waved and went back into the house. And the man, along with Dad and Thomas, came down off the porch. And they went over to the pot that was hanging over the fire. The woman came back out of the house with something in her hands. And she took it over to Dad and Thomas. Dad took it from the woman and started back toward the car. I told Buddy, "I think Dad's got a big pan of soap. I wonder whose kid it is." Buddy simply said, "Shut up, squirt." And Dad reached the car. And he said, "Here, boys, Miss Soap Sally baked you a pie." Now who's afraid? Buddy. He yelled, "I ain't eating no soap pie." And he opened the other door and started running back down the road. That's when Dad yelled at him and said, "Buddy Autry, get back here. I'm just kidding. It's not soap." Well, Buddy stopped. They came walking back. Dad said, "All right, boys, enough's enough. It's time you know what's going on. Y'all come with me." I ain't going." And he took me and Buddy by our shirt collars and somewhat dragged us to the porch. He then said, "Mr. and Miss Johnson, I'd like for you to meet my boys, Buddy and Bobby." Well, as Paul Harvey would say, here's the rest of the story. Seems the Johnsons were just a nice couple of elderly people that would collect old bicycles and other broken wagons or toys. And Mr. Johnson would fix them up. Mrs. Johnson would clean them up and paint them. And then they would take them to the orphanage to give to kids that otherwise wouldn't get any toys. The big pot they had beside the house was used for washing clothes, and also for times when they were plucking feathers off of chickens. The things we saw hanging from the ropes in the barn was a couple of pigs Mr. Johnson was slaughtering so he could also donate meat to the orphanage. And yep, those big bags that we had seen him drag out of the truck, they were just what they looked like, sacks of potatoes. So Dad said, "You see, boys, what you thought was a bad thing is really a good thing. And you know, as the good book says, don't judge a book by its cover." Well, maybe it doesn't say that completely, but you will find over in John chapter 7, verse 24, where it tells us, "Do not judge by appearances, but judge with right judgment." Gosh, you know, wasn't too bad after that night. And it's kind of strange. Neither Dad, nor any of my uncles, nor my friends' dads ever mention Soap Sally or Soap Sack Man again. And now, neither will I. From my back porch, that's about all this old rocking chair has for today. I'm sure glad you stopped by for a spell. Shared a little time with me. You know, life moves fast out there at times, but every now and then it's good just to slow down and take a breath and remember what really matters. Again, from the Bible, it tells us in Psalms 46:10, "Be still and know that I am God." And maybe that's what we've done here today. Just been still for a little while and told little stories. Until next time, this is Bobby Autry, reminding you no matter where you've been or what you're going through, there's always hope, there's always peace to be found, and there's always room for one more. I'll be right here waiting on you, so pull up a chair anytime. And if you have a moment, we'd love to hear from you. Our email address is on the screen. So for now, God bless you, and I'll see you next time, right here on the back porch in my rocking chair.